Let me ask you two quick questions before we let you go. Number one, Brexit impact. Those negotiations are going. Everybody's finding that it's neither as easy as everybody thought, nor is there as big of a money pot at the end of it. 350 million pounds a week is going to Brussels, was the bumper sticker. That got a lot of votes. It turns out that's not the case, and in fact, there were a lot of rebates and subsidies, including Her Majesty gets from the EU that would no longer be got for the number one she's the number one real estate owner, I think, on the planet, actually, if you look at it, add up all the terrain.
I'm sure the Sultan of Dubai or some of the sovereign wealth funds may be a bit bigger, but yes, the point well made.
But it's such lovely countryside she has as well. But what is the potential impact of Brexit? I mean, we're talking about where we are now, before this process has gotten nearly as acrimonious as sadly we expect it to be, because tensions have been rising as these talks go through. Tell us a little bit about what the Brexit impact's going to be, and then I want to end it on a positive note, which is to get from you, what are the silver linings here this week that we are going to be seeing? Tremendous technology is going to be on display. A lot of brilliant ideas from some of the world's best engineers in all of these fields. So let's take the first question: possible Brexit impact.
The most immediate and simple one, as it were, is the UK defence budget. There is a promise, though political promises are being what they are, whether it happens. But the promise is the budget will rise by inflation plus 0.5%. What if Brexit drives inflation through the roof? Then we are not going to get that, and the cost of defence equipment will just simply go up. Same time, if Brexit causes a reduction in the size of the economy through a recession, the 2% of GDP spending pledge, well, if the GDP of the UK falls, then defence spending falls. These things are just not talked about because they frighten people massively. We heard from the First Sea Lord, Admiral Philip Jones. His commitment is Brexit doesn't mean we stop working with the Europeans. There's an ever deeper series of understandings to work with European navies. But as I've said, one of the problems is all three services are raiding their operations budget, cutting exercises, cutting training to fund equipment. And so actually the UK is retreating from the European scene. So other navies and other air forces and land armies are seeing less of the UK. So this is the real risk, and I don't get any idea that inside the MOD this is understood. And again, it was mentioned HMS Argyll, moored outside the centre here, will be going to Asia next year to fly the flag, which actually highlights when was the last time this happened, and it's one frigate. Well, whoopee. I think it's hardly been noticed by especially the Royal Navy. The French Navy have recently signed a strategic cooperation deal with the Indian Navy, whereby they will have an escort ship about 300 days a year operating with the Indian Navy, sometimes under Indian Navy command. That is presence, that is commitment. I notice nothing of that coming out of the MOD for all three domains.
And is 2% of GDP, which Fallon always drives home as a point, uses it as a cudgel, in fact, on other NATO nations, along with Washington, to beat up on countries to spend more money. Is that going to be over at the end of this cut round, do you think?
Look, the fact that at the moment the UK, and it won't release how it calculates it, okay? The UK figures include spending on GCHQ, the Communications Intercept Agency. Okay, fair enough, that does provide incredibly good intelligence. It includes some aspects of our overseas aid. It includes pensions to soldiers, sailors and airmen.
Which is a first, because Britain didn't use to calculate that as part of it.
Basically, the 2% commitment and the British, we're doing this, is complete deception. What I find interesting, and again, we can have our doubts whether it'll happen, is you look at France under President Macron. He has said 2025, at the latest, he hopes 2023, 2% of GDP, excluding pensions, excluding operations. And by the way, if you look at the likely predictions, and okay, lots of things can happen between now and then, that will be a French defence budget of at least 50 billion euros, possibly even 60 billion. Under current calculations for the UK, we would be lucky to be spending 40 billion. So at the moment as well, you get this one of which Fallon says the whole time, the UK spends more than anyone else in Europe. Do you know what? In 3 or 4 years, we could well be overtaken by the French, the Germans, possibly even the Turks. And that will be a bit of a strategic, if not defeat, it's going to cause people to think twice.
Now, after we've had this dose of reality, talk to us about what the silver linings are that we're going to see at DSEI. Show starts tomorrow. It's one of these rare shows that really goes gangbusters all the way through the end of the week. It's sort of midday Friday when it starts to tune down a little bit. But tell us what is out there, what we're going to see, and what the silver linings for British defence are.
I think you can see areas in guided weapons, for example. where MBDA, and specifically the Anglo-French side, but also including the Italian, have been coming up with products mainly in the air-to-air and naval side, which do actually break the mold, come up with radical new solutions, and are starting to enter service in the Royal Navy. Just think of the Meteor missile, which is now either integrated or about to be integrated with all the European aircraft. That is a game changer. And it shows what happens if you have stability of investment. Governments don't change their minds every 6 months. They go, no, we will go for the long term with this. And that type of attitude on what's called team complex weapons, which combines the entire guided weapons industries of the UK and France, you are seeing innovation, more capable products at a lower cost. So that is certainly one area of interest. AESA radars, I know it's probably thought to be an American speciality, unsung if you look at some of the things out of Leonardo, and you see the fact that once you put it on an aircraft like the Gripen, it starts beating all comers hands down. We see a lot more of those in areas of innovation alongside with airborne electronic warfare. And I think this year, one of the ones which is going to be well worth keeping an eye out on, even more so than last year, an absolute raft of soldier systems, capitalising on the inquisitiveness of European nations of the last 5-6 years. I think these are finally coming to fruition. And the perhaps really good thing is most of these are coming from SMEs. Yes, some bits of it are coming from the primes. A lot of them are coming from the SMEs who've been cooperating with industry and other SMEs and coming up with absolutely radical solutions.
Francis, as usual, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it and hope to catch you at the end of the show for a recap.
Absolutely, Vargo. Delighted.